The billionaire slammed his hand on the glass case. The ancient tablet rattled inside. Then he saw her, a small black girl in duct-tape sneakers standing at the front of the crowd. "What is this? What is this? Who let this dirty child in here?" He turned to his staff. "Get this thing out of my building now. This isn't a zoo." The girl didn't move. She didn't cry. She looked straight at him and said quietly, "I can read it, sir." The room went dead silent. He stepped closer, towering over her. "You professors from Oxford couldn't crack this. What makes you think a creature like you could even come close?" She said nothing. She just waited. But what happened next left every single person in that room gasping. Let me take you back. South side of Chicago, the kind of cold that crawls under your jacket and stays there. A young girl named Aaliyah Brooks walked to school the same way she always did. Past the boarded-up barber shop, past the halal grocery with Arabic script on the awning, past the Chinese restaurant with its faded menu taped to the window. Most kids would walk right by. Aaliyah read every word, not just the English. All of it, the Arabic, the Chinese characters, the Spanish graffiti on the overpass wall. Her lips moved as she walked, whispering sounds that didn't belong to any language she had ever been taught. She wasn't trying to show off. She wasn't even trying to learn. She just couldn't stop. Letters called to her the way music calls to some people. She heard them everywhere. At school, nobody noticed. Her teacher saw a quiet girl in old clothes who sat in the back row. Her grades were average because she was bored. The tests never asked the kind of questions she could really answer. But after school, that was when Aaliyah came alive. Every single day, she walked to the public library. Not the children's section. She went straight to the back corner where the old reference books lived. Linguistics textbooks, a guide to Egyptian hieroglyphics, a cracked volume on Sumerian cuneiform. The librarian, Mrs. Jenkins, watched her from the front desk. She had been watching for months. She never said anything. She just made sure nobody moved those books. One evening, the school janitor, Darius Coleman, found Aaliyah sitting on the hallway floor after hours. She had a photocopied page spread across her knees, Phoenician script, ancient, dead for thousands of years. And in the margins, in pencil, she had written a full translation. No reference guide in sight. Darius crouched down beside her. "Little one, where'd you learn to do that?" Aaliyah looked up at him like the question didn't make sense. "I didn't learn it. The letters just talk to me. I listen." Darius stared at that page for a long time. Then he pulled out his phone and started searching for something. Darius Coleman had served 2 tours overseas. He had seen things that would break most people. But sitting on that hallway floor, looking at a child's handwriting next to symbols that were older than civilization, that shook him in a different way. He didn't sleep that night. He sat at his kitchen table, searching the internet for anything that could explain what he had seen. That was when he found it. The Langston Challenge. Victor Langston, the billionaire founder of Langston Global Industries, held a public contest every year. An impossible puzzle, a grand dare to the world. This year, Victor had obtained a clay tablet fragment covered in a script that no living person had been able to read. A mix of Proto-Elamite and something even older. Something that predated any known written language. He had put up $2 million. He had invited the best linguists on the planet. Oxford sent 3 scholars. MIT sent 2. The Sorbonne sent their top researcher. Months of trying, not one of them cracked it. And Victor loved that. He loved being right. He loved saying nobody could do it. Darius printed a photograph of the tablet inscription and brought it to Aaliyah the next afternoon. "Take a look at this. Tell me what you see." Aaliyah held the photo with both hands. She tilted her head. Her eyes moved across the symbols slowly, left to right, then right to left. She was quiet for a long time. Then she picked up her pencil. She didn't hesitate. She didn't guess. She wrote the way a river moves, steady, sure, like it already knew where it was going. Line after line, she filled one notebook page, then another. On a third page, she started building a key, matching symbols to sounds, finding patterns inside patterns. Darius watched her hand move and felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. He didn't understand a single word she had written, but he understood the certainty in her hand. This wasn't guessing. This was reading. When she finished, she set the pencil down and looked up. "It's old, older than the other ones I've read, but it's a story. Someone was trying to tell a story. Darius picked up the pages carefully, like they were made of glass. That night, he photographed every page and emailed them to the linguistics department at the University of Chicago. No name, no explanation, just the images. The reply came quickly. Dr. Simone Harper, professor of ancient languages, wrote back 3 sentences. Where did you get this? This aligns with partial decipherments we've been working on for years. Who produced this translation? Darius called her the next morning. A young girl. Silence on the other end. A long, heavy silence. That's not possible. I watched her do it, ma'am, on a hallway floor with a number 2 pencil. Another silence. Then Dr. Harper said something Darius would never forget. Bring her to me. Now let me be clear about something. This story isn't about a child being gifted. Gifted kids exist everywhere. In every neighborhood, in every zip code, in every tax bracket. This story is about what happens when nobody's looking. Because here's the truth. Aaliyah had been reading dead languages for years. In library corners, on hallway floors, in an apartment so small she did her homework on the kitchen counter. And not one person in her life, not one teacher, not one counselor, not one adult in a position of power had ever stopped and said, wait, what is this child doing? Not until a janitor sat down next to her on a dirty floor. Think about that. The first person who saw Aaliyah truly saw her was the man everyone else walked past without a second glance. Sometimes the people we overlook are the only ones paying attention. But Dr. Harper had asked Darius to bring Aaliyah in. And that was where everything changed because the University of Chicago was about to meet the most extraordinary mind they had ever encountered. And they weren't ready. To understand Aaliyah, you need to understand Loretta. Loretta Brooks was Aaliyah's grandmother, a former school teacher. Years in the classroom before her knees gave out and the pension wasn't enough. Now she cleaned offices at night. Her hands smelled like bleach and her back never stopped aching. But every morning that apartment was spotless, and every corner had books stacked on the radiator, tucked under the bed, lined up along the kitchen counter like soldiers. Loretta didn't have money for much, but she always had money for books. Aaliyah's mother, Monique, died when Aaliyah was young, an illness they caught too late because they couldn't afford to catch it early. No insurance, no savings, just a hospital bill that arrived after the funeral. Loretta took Aaliyah in that same month. No hesitation, no complaint. She just cleared out the spare room, set up a small bed, and put a lamp on the nightstand. Next to the lamp, she placed a dictionary, a battered Webster's held together with rubber bands. The cover was soft from decades of handling. The pages were yellow at the edges, and inside the front cover in blue ink, Monique had written 6 words. Words are the only doors that nobody can lock. Aaliyah read that inscription every single morning. She would press her fingers against her mother's handwriting like she could feel warmth left behind in the ink. Every night, Loretta had a ritual. She would sit in her rocking chair, open that dictionary to a random page, and read one entry out loud. The word, the pronunciation, the definition, sometimes the origin. Aaliyah would listen from her bed, eyes closed, breathing slow, letting the words settle into her like rain into dry soil. That was how it started. Not with genius, not with ambition, but with a grandmother's voice and a dead mother's handwriting. People would later ask Aaliyah why she read so much. Why dead languages? Why ancient scripts that nobody cared about anymore? She told her grandmother once quietly, almost like a secret, if nobody reads their words, it's like they die again. Loretta didn't say anything. She just held that child and let the silence say everything. The University of Chicago linguistics department smelled like old coffee and older paper. The hallways were lined with framed degrees and awards behind glass, names with titles, letters after letters after letters. Aaliyah walked through those halls in her too big coat and her duct-tape sneakers. She held Darius's hand and said nothing. Her eyes moved across every sign, every plaque, every printed label on every office door. A graduate student passed them in the corridor. He glanced at Aaliyah, then at Darius, then leaned toward a colleague and whispered something. They both smirked. Darius's jaw tightened, but he kept walking. Dr. Simone Harper was waiting in her office. She had published more papers on ancient scripts than almost anyone alive. She looked at Aaliyah the way a doctor looks at an X-ray. Careful, clinical, not unkind, but not warm either. Sit down, sweetheart. Aaliyah sat, her feet didn't touch the floor. Dr. Harper placed 3 tests on the desk, 3 sheets of paper, 3 different scripts. I want you to look at these. Take your time. Tell me what you see. The first sheet was Coptic, an ancient Egyptian language written in Greek letters. Aaliyah picked it up, studied it for less than a minute, and began translating out loud, word by word, sentence by sentence, near perfect accuracy. Dr. Harper's pen stopped moving. The second sheet was Linear B, a syllabic script from Bronze Age Greece. Aaliyah worked through it quietly, identifying the sound values, building the structure, producing a coherent reading. She crossed out one word and corrected herself, then kept going. Dr. Harper removed her glasses and set them on the desk. The third sheet was Rongorongo, one of the most mysterious writing systems on Earth, found only on Easter Island, never fully deciphered by anyone. Aaliyah stared at it longer than the others. She tilted her head. Her pencil hovered over the page. I can't read all of it, she said. But these symbols here, they repeat every 4th line, and this part mirrors the structure on the 2nd line, just reversed. She pointed to a cluster of glyphs in the center. These aren't words, they're counters, like a rhythm. 1, 2, 3, rest. 1, 2, 3, rest. Dr. Harper stood up from her chair slowly, like the ground had shifted under her. What Aaliyah had just identified, the repeating structural pattern, the rhythmic spacing, was something Dr. Harper's own research team had missed entirely. Researchers, years of work, and a young girl found it in minutes. Dr. Harper's coffee sat on the desk, untouched, cold. How do you see the patterns, Aaliyah? Aaliyah thought about it. Then she said something that Dr. Harper would repeat in interviews for years. It's like music. The shapes have a rhythm. When you hear the rhythm, you hear what they're saying. Dr. Harper didn't respond right away. She walked to the window. She looked out at the campus quad where students years older than Aaliyah were struggling with their first-year phonetics courses. Then she turned to Darius. Her voice was low and steady, but her hands were shaking. This child isn't just gifted. She has an intuitive grasp of linguistic structure that I have never seen in decades of research. She sees relationships in these scripts the way a composer hears harmony. She paused. She needs to take the Langston challenge. Darius exhaled. How? Langston doesn't let just anyone walk in. Dr. Harper looked at Aaliyah, still sitting in that big chair with her feet dangling above the floor. You need a sponsor, and that's not going to be easy. Dr. Harper made the call. She contacted the Langston Challenge Committee directly. She submitted Aaliyah's credentials, her test results, her translations. Everything was documented. Everything was verified. The response came from Harlan Reeves, Victor Langston's chief of staff, the man who controlled access to everything in Langston's world. Harlan reviewed the application on a video call. Dr. Harper watched his face change as he read. A young girl from the South Side. He leaned back in his chair. Dr. Harper, I respect your work, but we've had applications from Cambridge, from the Sorbonne, from research institutions with 100-year reputations. We're not running a charity talent show. Dr. Harper pushed back. Her translations are more accurate than anything your previous candidates produced. I can verify everything. Harlan smiled, the kind of smile that isn't really a smile. It's not about accuracy, it's about credibility. She has no institutional backing, no formal training, no academic record. If we let in every kid with a party trick, we'd lose everything this challenge stands for. He never said the word race. He didn't have to. Every word he chose was a wall built from something uglier than policy. Qualifications, credibility, institutional backing, each one a locked door with no key offered. Dr. Harper knew exactly what she was hearing. She had spent decades in academia. She knew how it worked. The rules were never written down. They didn't need to be. She tried one more time. Harlan, I'm telling you, this child is extraordinary. And I'm telling you the answer is no. The call ended. But that wasn't the worst part. At a charity dinner, Marcus Langston stood up during cocktail hour. Victor's son, tailored suit, inherited everything, earned nothing. Someone at his table mentioned the South Side girl, the one trying to enter his father's challenge. Marcus laughed loud enough for the whole room to hear. A young girl from the ghetto reading ancient tablets. What's next? Toddlers doing brain surgery? This is what happens when you let social media run academia. The table laughed, every single person. Marcus swirled his glass and added, "Someone should tell that little girl to stay in school. Maybe learn English first before she tries dead languages." More laughter, louder this time. Nobody at that table knew Aaliyah's name. Nobody knew about the hallway floor or the pencil or the library corner. Nobody knew about Loretta or the dictionary or the mother who died too young. To them, she was a joke, a punchline between courses. That same night, Aaliyah sat on her bed at home. Darius had told her, not the cruel details, just enough. The committee said no, they weren't going to let her in. She didn't cry. She just got quiet in the way that children get quiet when they learn something painful about the world for the first time. Loretta sat beside her. "Baby, listen to me. The people who build the tallest walls are the ones most afraid of what's on the other side. You just keep reading. The words don't care who's holding the book." Aaliyah leaned into her grandmother's shoulder. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then softly, "Grandma, why do they hate us?" Loretta closed her eyes. She didn't have an answer that wouldn't break something inside that child, so she just held her tighter. That night, after Aaliyah fell asleep, Dr. Harper sat alone in her office. She picked up her phone one more time. This time, she didn't call the committee. She called Victor Langston directly. While Dr. Harper waited for Victor to return her call, she made a decision. She wasn't going to let Aaliyah sit at home and disappear. She took the girl to the Oriental Institute, the University of Chicago's Museum of Near Eastern Antiquities, one of the most important collections of ancient artifacts in the world. Dr. Harper told Aaliyah it was just a visit, a chance to see real tablets, real inscriptions, things she had only ever seen in photocopies and library books. But Dr. Harper had another reason. A group of visiting scholars was there, researchers from different countries. They had been debating the meaning of a recently excavated Mesopotamian clay seal for over a month. No agreement, no consensus, just arguments going in circles. Dr. Harper didn't tell them about Aaliyah. She just walked the girl through the exhibit hall and waited. Aaliyah moved slowly, her eyes swept across every display case. She stopped in front of a cylinder seal behind thick glass. The scholars were standing around it, talking over each other in tight, frustrated voices. Aaliyah stood on her toes to see the inscription. She tilted her head. She read it the way she read everything, silently, patiently, listening to the rhythm of the shapes. Then she spoke quietly, almost to herself. "It's a trade receipt, measures of barley for bolts of linen. That mark on the left is the merchant's name. It's a compound symbol, two signs pressed together." The scholars stopped talking. One of them, a tall man with a gray beard, turned and looked down at her. He laughed, short and sharp, dismissive. "Excuse me, little girl. We've been studying this piece for weeks." Another scholar, a woman with round glasses, didn't laugh. She pulled out a reference text from her bag. She opened it to a page of known parallel inscriptions. Her finger moved down the column. Then it stopped. Her face went pale. Aaliyah was right. Not approximately right. Not close. Exactly right. The trade values, the logographic compound, the merchant seal structure, all of it. The woman looked at Dr. Harper, then back at Aaliyah. "How old is she?" "Young." The tall man with his gray beard wasn't laughing anymore. A third scholar, younger, standing near the back, pulled out her phone. She didn't ask permission. She just started recording. Aaliyah standing on her toes in duct-tape sneakers reading an inscription that was ancient, while a circle of adults stared at her in silence. That video was shared privately at first. Academic group chats, department emails, linguistics forums, a clip of a child doing what grown experts couldn't. Then it leaked. Someone posted it on social media with no caption, just the footage. A small black girl in a museum reading ancient script out loud while scholars watched with their mouths open. It didn't go viral immediately, but it moved quietly, steadily, like a match dropped in dry grass. Comments poured in from professors, researchers, students, some amazed, some skeptical, some angry that a child was being exploited for content. But one comment stood out, posted from an anonymous account with no profile picture. Just 4 words, "Send me her file." Victor Langston watched that museum video. He sat alone in his study. The room was dark except for the glow of his tablet. Around him, books lined the walls from floor to ceiling. First editions, original manuscripts, texts in languages most people didn't know existed. Before the money, before the empire, before Langston Global Industries became a name on buildings, Victor Langston was a linguist, A real one. He had spent his younger years doing field work in forgotten villages, documenting dying languages with a tape recorder and a notebook. He knew what he was watching. He recognized it the way a retired pianist recognizes a prodigy the first time they hear one play. He picked up the phone and called Harlan Reeves. The girl, the one Dr. Harper called about. Bring her in. Harlan's voice tightened. Sir, with all due respect, we have already reviewed her application. She doesn't meet the criteria. There's no institutional... Harlan. Silence. I didn't ask for your respect. I asked for the girl. The call ended. Aaliyah stood inside Victor Langston's private library. She had never seen anything like it. Books everywhere. Not stacked on radiators or tucked under beds. Real shelves, brass ladders, glass cases with manuscripts that were older than the country. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened slightly. She let go of Darius's hand and walked forward slowly like she was entering a church. Her fingers brushed the spines as she passed. She stopped at one shelf, pulled out a volume of Akkadian grammar, and opened it. Not to the beginning, to the exact section on verbal conjugation. Victor watched from across the room. He didn't say a word. He just watched. Finally, he spoke. They tell me you can read things nobody else can. Aaliyah didn't look up from the book. I can read what the letters want to say. Sometimes people just forgot how to listen. Victor stared at her for a long moment. His jaw moved slightly like he was chewing on something he couldn't swallow. Then he smiled. His staff would later say it was the first genuine smile they had seen from him in months. You remind me of someone I used to be. That afternoon, Victor Langston personally sponsored Aaliyah's entry into the Langston Challenge. He signed the papers himself. He overrode every objection Harlan raised, every single one. Harlan was furious, but powerless. Marcus heard the news at dinner and nearly choked on his wine. You're embarrassing this family, Dad. Victor didn't even look at him. The news leaked. Every major outlet picked it up. The headlines wrote themselves. Billionaire's own challenge to be attempted by a young Chicago girl. South Side child takes on the world's hardest puzzle. She can't be serious, but Langston is. The night before the challenge, their apartment was quiet. Loretta stood at the ironing board, pressing Aaliyah's one good shirt. White cotton hand-me-down, a little too big in the shoulders, but clean. Loretta made sure of that. The iron hissed against the fabric. Steam rose and disappeared. Outside, the city hummed. Sirens in the distance. The rattle of the train. A dog barking somewhere down the block. Aaliyah sat on her bed watching her grandmother work. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then Loretta knelt down and picked up Aaliyah's sneakers. The same pair, duct tape on the left sole, scuffed so deep the original color was just a memory. She took a wet rag and scrubbed them. Slowly, carefully, like she was polishing something precious. She couldn't afford new ones, and Aaliyah never asked. When Loretta finished, she set them by the door. Aaliyah looked at them and said, "They're perfect, Grandma." Loretta smiled, the kind of smile that holds back everything else. Then she went to the nightstand. She opened the drawer and pulled out the dictionary, the battered Webster's, rubber bands around the spine, yellow pages, soft cover. She held it for a moment. Then she sat beside Aaliyah and placed it in her hands. Your mama wanted you to have this when you were ready. She paused. I think you're ready. Aaliyah opened the front cover. She already knew what was there. She had read it many times, but tonight it felt different. Blue ink, her mother's handwriting. 6 words. Words are the only doors that nobody can lock. Aaliyah pressed her fingers against the letters. She closed her eyes. She held the book against her chest and didn't move. Loretta put her arm around her. Neither of them spoke. The iron cooled on the board. The city kept humming. And in that small, warm apartment, a grandmother and a granddaughter sat together in the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. Across the city, in a penthouse high above Lake Michigan, Victor Langston sat alone in his study. He held a framed photograph of himself, young, thin, kneeling in the dirt somewhere far away, notebook in hand, recording words from a language that would be dead within a decade. Before the suits, before the board meetings, before anyone called him sir. He set the photo down and whispered to no one, "Don't let them do to her what they did to me." Then he turned off the light. The Langston Cultural Center looked like a cathedral made of glass and marble. Chandeliers hung from ceilings 3 stories high. The floors reflected everything. The lights, the faces, the cameras. People filled the main hall. Scholars, journalists, tech executives, politicians, university presidents. Everyone dressed like the room demanded it. Dark suits, polished shoes, voices low and important. At the center of the stage, under a single glass case, the tablet fragment sat on black velvet, covered in symbols that had defeated every mind thrown at it. Spotlights hit the glass from 4 angles, making the ancient clay glow like it was alive. Cameras lined both sides of the hall. A live stream counter showed viewers climbing. Then the front doors opened. Aaliyah walked in holding her grandmother's hand. She wore her white cotton shirt ironed smooth. Her hair was pulled back with a ribbon Loretta had found in a drawer. And on her feet, the sneakers scrubbed clean but still scarred. Duct tape still holding the left sole together. Every head in the room turned. The whispers started immediately, some soft, some not soft enough. "That's the girl, she's a child. This is ridiculous." Loretta's hand tightened around Aaliyah's, but Aaliyah kept walking, steady, eyes forward. The same way she walked to the library every afternoon. The same rhythm, the same quiet certainty. Her sneakers squeaked on the marble floor, the same sound from before when she had been pushed out of this exact building. The same squeak. But this time she was walking toward the stage, not away from it. They were halfway across the lobby when a hand shot out and blocked their path. Harlan Reeves. He stood in front of them with 2 security guards behind him. His jaw was set. His eyes were cold. "This is a restricted area, authorized participants only." Darius stepped forward. "She is authorized." Mr. Langston signed off personally. Harlan didn't look at Darius. He looked down at Aaliyah the same way he had looked at her before, like she was something that had wandered in from outside and needed to be removed. "I don't care what was signed. This child does not belong here." He placed his hand on Aaliyah's shoulder, not gently, firmly pushing her backward. Loretta stiffened. Her grip on Aaliyah's hand turned to iron. The room was watching now, every single person. The cameras were rolling. Then a voice cut across the marble lobby like a blade. "Let her through, Harlan, or clean out your desk." Victor Langston stood at the top of the center aisle. His hands were at his sides. His voice was calm, but his eyes were not. Harlan's hand dropped. He stepped aside without a word. His face was tight. His jaw clenched so hard the muscles in his neck showed. Aaliyah walked past him. She didn't look up at him. She didn't need to. The stage was waiting. The rules were announced. Aaliyah would have time to examine the tablet fragment and produce a written translation. 3 independent linguists, including Dr. Harper, would verify the result. The $2 million prize was real. The cameras were live. Aaliyah sat down at a small desk on the stage, alone in front of the crowd and the viewers watching from home. On the desk, a pencil, a stack of blank paper, nothing else. The glass case was opened. The tablet fragment was placed in front of her on a padded stand. The timer started. Aaliyah looked at the tablet. She didn't move. Minutes passed in absolute silence. Her hands in her lap, her eyes moving across the symbols, back and forth, back and forth. The audience shifted. Whispers rippled through the rows. Harlan, standing at the side of the room, crossed his arms and smirked. Marcus Langston, seated in the second row, checked his watch and leaned toward the person next to him. A journalist in the press section typed something on her phone, probably a headline already written. Probably something cruel. Then Aaliyah picked up the pencil and she didn't stop. Line after line, page after page. Her hand moved with the same fluid certainty Darius had seen on that hallway floor. No hesitation, no erasing, no pausing to think. She built a grammatical framework on one page, a symbol key on another, cross-references on a third. She worked the way water moves through stone, finding every crack, filling every gap, following a path only she could see. The room went silent. Not the polite silence of an audience waiting, the deep silence of people realizing they were witnessing something they would never forget. Aaliyah set down her pencil. She had filled many pages front and back. She stood up. She picked up the pages. She walked them to the judge's table and placed them down gently. She still had time left. The crowd murmured. Dr. Harper took the pages. Her hands were trembling. The 3 judges reviewed in silence. Dr. Harper compared Aaliyah's structural analysis against known proto-Elamite fragments on her laptop. The second judge ran phonological cross-checks against academic databases. The third judge stood up, walked to the back of the room, stood there for a moment, then came back and sat down. Nobody breathed. Dr. Harper leaned forward to the microphone. Her voice was steady, but barely. The translation is internally consistent, structurally coherent, and aligns with every verifiable parallel in our existing databases. She paused. The room leaned in. In my professional opinion, this is the most complete decipherment of a proto-Elamite text ever produced. Another pause, longer this time. By anyone of any age. The room didn't clap. Not yet. For moments there was nothing. Just silence. The kind of silence that comes right before the world cracks open. Then it hit like a wave. People rose to their feet. Not a polite standing ovation. A roar. A sound that shook the chandeliers and bounced off marble walls and didn't stop. Aaliyah stood on that stage, blinking under the lights. She looked out at the sea of faces and cameras and noise, and she looked for only one person. Loretta standing, tears streaming down her face, both hands clutching the old dictionary against her chest. Aaliyah smiled. The applause didn't stop. It kept building, rolling through the hall like thunder that wouldn't let go. Scholars who had spent decades studying the same scripts were clapping so hard their palms turned red. Journalists forgot they were supposed to be objective. One cameraman lowered his camera and just watched. The live stream chat exploded, messages flying past faster than anyone could read. Hearts and crying emojis flooding the screen. Viewers multiplied quickly. On stage, Aaliyah stood perfectly still. Her sneakers, duct tape and all, planted on the same floor she had been pushed off of before. The spotlights made everything too bright. The noise made everything too loud. She was young and the whole world was staring at her. But she wasn't looking at the world. She was looking at her grandmother. Loretta hadn't moved. Tears ran down both cheeks. She didn't wipe them. She just held that old dictionary against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her standing. Then Victor Langston stood up. The room noticed. The applause softened. People watched the billionaire rise from his seat, button his jacket, and walk slowly toward the stage. He didn't rush. Every step was deliberate. Every eye followed him. He stepped onto the stage and stood in front of Aaliyah. For a moment, he just looked at her. The girl in the iron shirt and the broken sneakers. The girl his own staff had tried to throw out. The girl his own son had called a joke. Then he extended his hand. Not down to her, not the way adults reach for children. He held it out level, straight, the way you greet an equal. Aaliyah took it, her small hand inside his. They shook once. The room erupted again. Victor turned to the microphone. His voice was rough, like something in his throat didn't want to let the words out. I created this challenge because I believed the world had given up on listening to the past. I believed nobody was paying attention anymore. He paused. I was wrong. The world just hadn't met the right listener yet. He reached behind the podium and brought out a ceremonial check. He held it out to Aaliyah. She looked at it. She didn't reach for it. Instead, she turned around and looked at Loretta. Then she turned back to Victor and said in a voice so small the microphone barely caught it, "Can we use it to fix Grandma's apartment? The heat doesn't work." Victor's hand dropped an inch. His lips pressed together. He blinked once, twice. The room went silent completely. Then it came. Not applause, something quieter. The sound of people breaking open at the same time. The soft, sharp inhale of someone trying not to cry and failing. One person, then another, then row after row. Not sobbing, not dramatic. The quiet kind. The kind that comes when you see something so purely good that it cuts through every wall you have ever built. A young girl just won $2 million, and her first thought was her grandmother's broken heater. Victor knelt down slowly and looked Aaliyah in the eyes. "We'll fix the heat. I promise you that." The aftermath moved fast. The live stream clip of Aaliyah's answer about the heater spread rapidly. It was clipped, shared, screen recorded, reposted across every platform. Comment sections overflowed with people saying the same thing in 100 different ways. Within time, Dr. Harper publicly nominated Aaliyah for a fellowship for exceptional young scholars. Universities offered full future scholarships. A linguistics journal invited Aaliyah to be listed as co-author on Dr. Harper's next paper. She would be the youngest contributor in the journal's history. The Oriental Institute announced a new youth education wing. They named it after Monique Brooks, Aaliyah's mother, the woman who wrote 6 words inside a dictionary and changed everything. Marcus Langston's charity dinner comments resurfaced online. Every word he had said, the ghetto joke, the learn English remark, was screenshotted, quoted, and shared widely. The backlash was swift and total. Victor addressed it privately behind closed doors. Just father and son. You had every advantage I could give you. Every school, every connection, every door open before you even knocked. And you used all of it to laugh at a young girl. He paused. That's not my legacy. Marcus was removed from the Langston Foundation board. No public statement, no press conference, just a name quietly erased from a letterhead. Paste. Harlan Reeves resigned. No confrontation, no scene. He simply wasn't there. His office was empty, desk cleared. The only thing left behind was a single piece of paper, Aaliyah's original application, the one he had rejected. Her name printed at the top in Dr. Harper's handwriting. Sunlight came through the window and lit it up like a page from a manuscript nobody had bothered to read. A package arrived at Aaliyah's apartment. Small brown box, no return address. Inside, a brand new pair of sneakers, white, perfect, the right size. A card tucked in the tissue paper with the Langston Foundation logo. No message, just the logo. Aaliyah opened the box at the kitchen table. She held the new shoes up, turning them in the light. Clean leather, fresh laces, not a single scratch. Then she looked down at her old sneakers sitting by the door where Loretta always placed them. Duct tape, scuff marks worn through at the heel, scrubbed clean but carrying every step she had ever taken. She put the new ones on the shelf above her bed. Then she bent down, picked up the old ones and laced them up. Loretta watched from the doorway. Baby, why? Aaliyah pulled the laces tight and stood up. These are the ones that walked me there. Loretta pressed her hand against her mouth. She turned away so Aaliyah wouldn't see her face, but her shoulders shook just once. Some things don't need to be expensive to be priceless. Some things earn their value the hard way. One step at a time on cracked sidewalks in the cold with tape holding them together. Those sneakers weren't shoes anymore. They were proof. Aaliyah Brooks is enrolled in a specialized linguistics program, the youngest student they have ever accepted. She still lives with Loretta. Same apartment, but the heat works now, and there is a new bookshelf in the living room. Loretta built it herself. The books aren't stacked on radiators anymore. They have a home. Dr. Simone Harper co-published her next paper with Aaliyah listed as co-author. When the journal editors questioned it, Dr. Harper told them she did the work. Her name goes on the paper. They didn't ask again. Darius Coleman was hired by the Langston Foundation as a community outreach coordinator. Every week he visits public schools across Chicago's South Side. He walks the hallways. He checks the library corners. He looks for the quiet kids, the ones sitting on floors with pencils and borrowed books, the ones nobody else sees. He is looking for the next Aaliyah. He knows she is out there, probably already reading something extraordinary, probably being ignored. Victor Langston established the Brooks Initiative, the largest private endowment ever created to identify and support gifted children from underserved communities. He named it after Monique Brooks, a woman he never met, who never had enough money for health insurance, but who had enough wisdom to write 6 words inside a dictionary that changed her daughter's life. Loretta retired from cleaning offices. She doesn't smell like bleach anymore, but every night she still sits in her rocking chair, opens that old dictionary, and reads one entry out loud. Only now she is not reading to Aaliyah. She is reading to Aaliyah's little cousin, a young child who just moved in. He listens from his bed with his eyes closed, just like Aaliyah used to. The cycle continues quietly, the way the most important things always do. Now let me tell you why I chose to tell this story. It wasn't because of the $2 million. It wasn't because of the standing ovation or the headlines or the viral clip that made the whole internet cry. It was because of that hallway floor. A janitor, a little girl, a pencil, and a moment that almost didn't happen. That almost got walked past. That almost got swept up and thrown away with the rest of the things we don't stop to notice. That's what haunts me. Not the triumph, the almost. How close we came to never knowing her name. Studies show that millions of gifted students in the United States go unidentified every single year. disproportionately from Black and low-income communities. Not because the talent isn't there, because nobody's looking. That's not a number. That's a silence. And every year it gets louder. So here's what I want to ask you. Tomorrow, wherever you go, your job, your school, the bus, the grocery store, look at the person everyone else ignores. The quiet one, the one in the old shoes, the one sitting in the back row, in the corner, on the floor. And just for 1 second wonder, what can they do that nobody has ever asked about? Because someone once sat down next to a girl on a dirty hallway floor and asked that question. Just one question, and that question changed everything. If this story moved you, do something small. Look up a gifted youth program in your neighborhood, donate to a scholarship fund, volunteer at a library, or just pay attention. That's free. And sometimes that is all it takes. One person who stops, one person who sees, one person who says, "Show me what you can do." If you know someone who has been underestimated, send them this story. Drop a comment and tell me about the most talented person nobody ever believed in. I want to hear it. I want to tell their story next. Hit like if you believe every child deserves to be seen. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. And share this because somewhere out there, there is a kid on a hallway floor with a pencil waiting for someone to sit down beside them. One last thing, remember Aaliyah's words. Remember what her mother wrote inside that dictionary. And remember what a young girl taught a room full of billionaires, scholars, and cameras. The world didn't discover Aaliyah. Aaliyah discovered the world was finally ready to listen. Like genius don't got a dress code. The smartest person in the room might be the one in duct tape shoes that nobody even looks at. So stop judging. Just pay attention. One moment, one question, one person who sees you.